Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're embarking on a real deep dive into a book that has, well, truly challenged conventional wisdom about money and wealth. Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Hmm.
It's more than just, a text promising a shortcut to being well-informed about financial futures. It's really a profound guide to changing your mindset, like from the ground up,
Yeah.
designed to help you transform your thoughts into actual wealth.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, and really the core of Kiyosaki's message, is that it's not simply about what the rich do with money,
Right.
but how they fundamentally think about it. It's a mindset that's just, well, completely different from how the poor and middle class typically approach their finances.
Totally different.
So our mission today, it isn't just to summarize the book, right? It's to really explore how you, listening now, can actually implement these powerful lessons in your own life.
Yeah, the implementation. That's the key for us today.
It's about moving beyond just, earning money
The paycheck grind.
to truly having money work for you,
Yeah.
creating that path towards genuine financial freedom.
Exactly. And that focus on implementation, like you said, is key. We've meticulously pulled some incredibly potent nuggets from the core of the book. We're really focusing on the practical, the truly implementable stuff.
Hmm.
How do you actually shift your attitude? Challenge those, deeply ingrained assumptions that might be holding you back and start thinking like the rich.
It's a big ask.
It is. Because this isn't just about stacking dollars in a bank account. It's about transforming your very thoughts, your emotional responses, even your daily actions into the raw material for lasting wealth.
And to really get Kiyosaki's philosophy and the kind of radical shift he's proposing, we have to start with his central premise. His two dads.
Right. The core story.
He grew up with these two incredibly influential men, right?
Huh?
And each represented a vastly different worldview when it came to money.
Yeah.
So first there was his biological father, the one he calls his poor dad. Now, this was a highly educated, very intelligent man, had a PhD.
Impressive credentials.
Absolutely. Finished 4 years of undergraduate work in less than 2. Went on to Stanford, Chicago, Northwestern.
Yeah.
All on full scholarships.
No.
Yet despite all that, despite a substantial income as a high-ranking government employee, his diligent work ethic, he always struggled financially, always seemed to leave bills unpaid at the end of the month.
Which is fascinating in itself.
It really is.
And then there was the rich dad, his best friend Mike's father.
Mm-hmm. And the contrast, well, it couldn't be more stark, could it?
No.
This guy, rich dad, never even finished the 8th grade.
Really? 8th grade.
Yeah. But through, sheer entrepreneurial spirit, a really keen financial acumen, he eventually became one of the richest men in Hawaii. Left tens of millions to his family, charities, his church.
So you have the PhD struggling
Yeah.
and the 8th grade dropout becoming mega rich.
Exactly. Both men, undeniably successful in their careers, right? Both worked incredibly hard. But their financial outcomes, their philosophies,
Yeah.
wildly different.
And that's where the core lesson really starts, isn't it?
It is. And what's truly profound, what Kiyosaki really emphasizes, is that having these two contrasting viewpoints, it forced him to, and this is his quote, think more, comparing, and then choosing for myself.
Not just accepting one or the other.
No, not at all. He wasn't just accepting or rejecting one view outright. He was engaged in this critical internal process, self-discovery, independent thought. And that, in the long run, proved way more valuable than just adopting a single perspective.
So it highlights that foundational lesson he imparts.
Yeah.
The huge power of your thoughts and the choices you make, how they shape your financial reality.
Yeah.
It forced you to question everything.
Absolutely. Everything he was taught.
That choice of perspective is just crucial, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it showed up powerfully in their daily language, their deeply held beliefs about money.
Definitely. For instance, Kiyosaki's poor dad, he'd often lament, the love of money is the root of all evil.
A classic saying. We hear that a lot.
We do. And he had this deeply ingrained habit, almost automatic, of saying, I can't afford it.
Right. End of story.
Exactly. And Kiyosaki observed that phrase, it didn't just shut down the conversation. It effectively shut down his mind, closed off any possibility of finding a solution. Mental shutdown.
Whereas Rich Dad, totally different tune.
Completely. He'd passionately counter with, the lack of money is the root of all evil. Quite the reversal.
It is. And he absolutely forbade the phrase, I can't afford it. Just wouldn't allow it.
So what was the alternative?
He insisted on asking, how can I afford it? Now, this wasn't about encouraging reckless spending, buying everything you want.
Right, not just wishful thinking.
Not at all. It was a deliberate technique,
Yeah.
a mental exercise to force the brain to work, to foster financial creativity, and to combat what he saw as, well, mental laziness.
So changing the statement to a question.
Precisely. That simple shift immediately changes your whole cognitive approach. It forces your mind to look for solutions instead of just accepting defeat.
It's like a workout for your financial brain. That's exactly how Rich Dad saw it. He firmly believed his brain got stronger every single day because he exercised it, pushed it to find new solutions, new opportunities.
And the stronger it got.
The more money he could make. And you see it in their long-term results, right? One dad grew financially stronger, the other grew weaker, like someone hitting the gym versus someone on the couch.
It wasn't about natural intelligence necessarily.
No, it was about consistent mental discipline, training your mind.
Okay, what else? What other big differences?
Well, their view on risk was another huge divergence. Poor dad's advice. Always cautious. When it comes to money, play it safe. Don't take risks.
Standard advice, really.
Very standard. But Rich Dad offered a much more empowering perspective. He said, learn to manage risks.
Manage it, not avoid it.
Exactly. This isn't about being reckless or, gambling. It's an imperative. Acquire the knowledge, the skills, the experience you need to understand risk, mitigate it, and ultimately leverage it intelligently for financial gain.
Okay, that makes sense. Learn the rules of the game.
Chris.
And here's a big one. This one always gets people because it just cuts against the grain of what we're all taught. Their perspective on assets.
Ah, yes. The health.
The house. Poor Dad believed, like so many people do, our home is our largest investment and our greatest asset.
The cornerstone of the middle-class dream.
Right. But Rich Dad, completely different, almost shocking take. He said, my house is a liability, and if your house is your largest investment, you're in trouble.
Boom. That just challenges a foundational belief for so many, forces us to completely rethink what an asset actually is.
We'll definitely dig into why he said that later, but what about daily habits?
Yeah, those diverge too in really telling ways. Poor Dad, he paid his bills first, diligently, met the deadlines, prioritized his creditors.
Seems responsible.
It does on the surface. Rich Dad, though, strategically paid his bills last.
Last, how does that work? Seems risky.
It wasn't about being irresponsible. It was about a calculated, strategic approach to cash flow. We'll unpack that more when we talk about the pay yourself first lesson. It's crucial. And think about education. Poor Dad diligently taught Kiyosaki how to write an impressive resume, right? To get a good job.
The standard path.
Rich Dad. He taught him how to write business and financial plans, how to create jobs, create value, build systems. He emphasized self-reliance, enterprise, not dependency on an employer or the government.
Creating versus seeking. Big difference.
Huge.
So, for you, our listener, just take a moment here. Reflect. Which of these voices, Poor Dad or Rich Dad, sounds more like your own inner dialogue, or maybe the advice you've always gotten? And how might simply reframing that statement, I can't afford it, into the question, how can I afford it? How might that open up entirely new pathways in your thinking, not just about buying stuff, but about your whole financial future?
It's a practical tool.
It is. It's an actionable mental shift. Right now, it can immediately expand your possibilities.
Okay, so once you start to grasp these foundational mindset shifts, the next really crucial question is, how do we actually apply this in the real world?
Right, the implementation.
That brings us squarely to Kiyosaki's powerful first lesson. The rich don't work for money.
Okay, unpack that. Sounds counterintuitive.
It does. And the lesson began for young Robert Kiyosaki with this really powerful, almost shocking experiment. He was 9 years old. He and his best friend Mike offered to work for Mike's dad, Rich Dad, for free, just to learn about money.
Bold move for a 9-year-old.
Well, the Rich Dad offered them a job, 10 cents an hour, at his store, doing basic stuff, dusting shelves, stacking cans, sweeping floors.
Okay, menial work.
Very. After 3 weeks of doing this diligently, Rich Dad told them he was now going to pay them nothing for the same work.
Whoa. Okay, I can imagine the reaction.
Oh, yeah. Kiyosaki describes feeling the surge of anger, feeling totally cheated. He wanted to quit immediately.
Understandable.
He even accused Rich Dad of being cheap, abusive, exploiting his workers. But Rich Dad wasn't exploiting them. It was a deliberate lesson, hands-on, designed to provoke a deeper understanding of what true work and wealth creation actually mean.
So it was a test.
A test of their resolve? Absolutely. And a powerful demonstration of how easily emotions can control your financial decisions.
How did Rich Dad explain it?
He said true learning requires energy, passion, and a burning desire. And he provocatively stated that anger is a big part of that formula. Passion, he said, is anger and love combined.
Interesting take on anger.
It is. The whole goal of making them work for free was to force them to think, find solutions, not just passively accept a paycheck. He was pushing them to identify opportunities, leverage their minds, especially when the financial carrot of a wage was gone.
So learn to make money work for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not the other way around. He was challenging that deeply ingrained belief that hard work for a wage is the only way.
He really put the responsibility back on Kiyosaki, didn't he?
He did. He challenged him directly, said something like, stop blaming me, thinking I'm the problem. If you think I'm the problem, you have to change me. But if you realize you're the problem, then you can change yourself, learn something, grow wiser.
Oof, that hits home.
It does. And Kiyosaki realized most people, when faced with a financial problem, they just quit, go look for another job, thinking that will solve their problem.
But it usually doesn't.
Rarely, because they haven't changed their fundamental approach to money. They just trade one rat race for another.
Which leads us right into that core concept,
Yeah.
the rat race.
Exactly. Rich Dad described it as that pervasive pattern. Get up, go to work, pay bills, get up, go to work, pay bills over and over.
A hamster wheel.
A hamster wheel. He observed that people's lives become forever controlled by these two incredibly powerful emotions, fear and greed.
Fear and greed, explain that.
Fear of not being able to pay the bills, fear of getting fired, fear of not having enough money for retirement, just constant financial anxiety.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, greed. Or maybe desire, that insatiable desire for all the things money can buy, the new car, the bigger house, the fancy vacations.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Precisely. And the core problem, Kiyosaki argues, is that people react emotionally to money instead of thinking logically, strategically.
They hope more money will fix the feelings.
Right. They desperately hope more money will soothe their fear or satisfy their desires, but it rarely does. Instead, money ends up controlling them.
Kiyosaki puts it vividly, doesn't he? Fear pushes you out the door. Desire calls to you.
Promising comfort and luxury. That's the trap. Exactly. The money becomes this illusion, like the carrot dangling in front of the donkey. Keeps it moving, but never truly satisfies.
So this is where that big shift comes in. Working for money versus having money work for you.
That's the profound shift. Rich Dad's philosophy was crystal clear. I don't work for money, money works for me.
Powerful declaration.
It is. And he passionately emphasized, if your goal is simply to work for money, then yeah, the traditional path makes sense. Stay in school, get good grades, secure a job. Fine.
Right.
But if you want money to work for you, then financial education, learning how money moves, how it grows, how to acquire assets, that becomes absolutely paramount. It's a completely different curriculum.
It's learning a whole new subject.
A subject most schools don't teach.
So, for you listening, how can you begin to identify those moments when fear or desire are driving your financial decisions instead of, logical, strategic thought?
Starts with awareness.
Kiyosaki suggests the first most crucial step is just telling the truth to yourself about how you're really feeling about money.
Be honest.
That self-awareness allows you to observe your emotional reactions rather than just blindly reacting to them. It's not about getting rid of emotions,
Yeah, you can't.
but managing them so they don't control your financial destiny.
That's a powerful distinction. And Kiyosaki himself, remember, even when he had that conventional job at Xerox, he was keenly focused on learning, actively building his asset column. He worked diligently, sure, but not just for the immediate paycheck. He saw his salary strategically as temporary capital to invest.
A means to an end.
Exactly, a means to the much larger long-term end of financial freedom. He wasn't emotionally attached to the paycheck itself, but to what it could let him build.
So this raises an important question for you listening now. Are you currently caught in this rat race cycle? Maybe feeling that fear or desire driving things. And what small intentional action could you take? Maybe this week to begin shifting from primarily working for money to intelligently having money start working for you.
Even a tiny step.
Could be super simple, starting to just observe your own financial reactions. Or maybe setting aside, I don't know, $10 specifically for investing, regardless of how small it feels. Just start.
Start the habit. Okay, our next lesson really dives into why teaching financial literacy is so crucial, and it focuses specifically on that fundamental distinction between assets and liabilities.
Okay, assets versus liabilities. This is core Kiyosaki.
Absolutely core. He argues the main flaw in traditional education systems is their almost exclusive focus on scholastic and professional skills. They teach you how to make money.
Get a good job.
Right, get a good job. But they completely neglect financial skills. They rarely teach you what to do with that money once you actually have it.
Which explains that paradox we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. It explains why highly educated professionals, bankers, doctors, accountants, folks earning substantial incomes can still find themselves struggling financially.
They're brilliant in their field.
Brilliant, highly skilled, but often financially illiterate when it comes to managing and growing their own wealth. It's like being an incredible architect who designs magnificent skyscrapers,
No.
but has no idea how to manage their own personal budget.
Ouch. Okay, so what's the fix? What's the core rule?
Rich Dad's golden rule of wealth. It's strikingly simple but profoundly impactful, he said. Rich people acquire assets. The poor and middle class acquire liabilities that they think are assets.
Okay, liabilities they think are assets. That's key.
That's the kicker, and he declared this was the only rule you needed to know for becoming rich. He was a big believer in the KISS principle, keep it super simple, especially with financial education.
Makes sense? Keep it simple. So how did he define asset and liability?
Super straightforward, refreshingly clear. An asset puts money in my pocket.
Okay, asset, money in.
And conversely, a liability takes money out of my pocket.
Liability, money out. Simple as that.
Simple as that. It's not about complex accounting jargon or fancy words. It's purely about the direction of cash flow. Does it flow to you or away from you?
And he stressed the numbers, right?
Constantly.
Yeah.
If you can't read the numbers, you can't tell an asset from a hole in the ground. Financial reporting, especially your personal income statement and balance sheet, they tell a story of cash flow. And that's the story you absolutely need to understand.
Okay, let's visualize that. Can you walk us through the cash flow patterns he describes for different situations?
Sure. Let's start with a poor person. Typically, their income comes from a single job salary,
Yeah.
right? And that income barely covers their expenses, taxes, rent, food, transport, clothes.
Hand to mouth, basically.
Pretty much. There's often little or nothing left over to acquire assets, and while their liabilities might be relatively small, they still create that continuous drain. The cycle is primarily about survival. Income flows in, flows right back out as expenses.
Okay, now the middle class.
Middle-class person often earns a higher salary, right? But here's the trap. Their expenses also increase significantly, often in direct proportion to their income, sometimes even exceeding it.
Lifestyle inflation.
Exactly. Higher taxes, bigger mortgage for a bigger house, car payments for newer cars, accumulating credit card debt, maybe student loans.
The usual suspects.
The usual suspects. Kiyosaki highlights bracket creep. As your income rises, you often move into higher tax brackets, so a bigger percentage of your hard-earned money goes to the government. Their liabilities grow, often outpacing their assets, trapping them deeper in that rat race.
So they feel like they're getting ahead because the salary is bigger.
Right, but they're just running faster on the hamster wheel. Increased income leads to increased expenses. They think they're progressing, but the pattern is the same.
Okay. Now the rich person. How does their pattern differ?
It looks entirely different. Their income primarily flows from their asset column.
That's their job.
Not primarily. Think rental income from properties, dividends from stocks, interest from bonds, royalties from intellectual property like books or patents.
Money working for them.
Exactly. And crucially, this income from assets consistently exceeds their expenses. Now, they still have expenses, of course, but they're carefully managed and minimized relative to their asset-generated income.
So the asset column just keeps growing.
Continually, almost on autopilot. While liabilities are strategically kept to a minimum, that's the core difference. Their money works for them, rather than them constantly working for money.
This brings us back to that dream home trap, the controversial point.
Yes, his challenge to the popular belief that your home is your largest asset.
So why does he call it a liability? From a cash flow perspective.
Well, think about all the associated expenses that consistently take money out of your pocket. Property tax, ongoing maintenance,
Always something.
insurance premiums, utilities, new furniture, upgrades, appliances breaking down. These are all regular outflows of cash, money leaving your pocket.
Okay, I see the cash flow argument. But what about appreciation? Homes go up in value.
They can, absolutely. But appreciation isn't guaranteed, and it's not cash flow. You don't realize that gain until you sell. Plus, beyond the direct expenses, There's a significant opportunity cost,
Meaning,
meaning the substantial amount of money tied up in an expensive home money that could have been invested elsewhere.
an actual income-generating asset.
Exactly. That money isn't generating income for you while it's locked up in the house. And Kiyosaki points out how home equity loans, often marketed as smart,
Yeah, tapping into your equity.
right, but they frequently just fold existing consumer debt into a bigger, longer-term mortgage. It extends the payment period, keeps people trapped in liability cycles. It might feel smart to consolidate, but you're just cementing a liability, not building an asset.
Okay, that's a challenging perspective. So for you listening, the takeaway here is take a hard look at your own finances.
Get honest with the numbers.
Apply Kiyosaki's simple cash flow test. Can you truly differentiate between what consistently puts money in your pocket versus what consistently takes it out?
Assets versus liabilities.
And, maybe more pointedly, what's one item you currently consider a significant asset that, based on this rigorous cash flow definition, might actually be a liability in disguise, draining your financial energy?
It requires brutal honesty, looking at the direction of your money.
Okay, let's move on. Lesson 3. Mind your own business.
Right. And this isn't necessarily about, quitting your job tomorrow and starting a company, though it could be
It's broader than that.
much broader. Kiyosaki emphasizes the critical importance of focusing on building your own asset column. Your business is your asset column.
Okay?
He notes that many people confuse their profession, what they study, what they do for a paycheck, with their actual business, what they own that generates income for them independently of their labor.
Like that Ray Kroc story.
Exactly. The McDonald's founder. When he spoke to MBA students, he'd ask, "What business am I in?"
And they'd say, hamburgers?
Right, conditioned thinking. But Kruk would correct them, famously saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not in the hamburger business. My business is real estate."
Because the real wealth came from owning the land under the restaurants.
Precisely. It shows that profound, almost counterintuitive thinking about what actually generates true, long-term wealth, distinguishing the product from the underlying asset.
So the fundamental mistake many people make is,
Spending their entire lives diligently minding someone else's business and making that person rich. Working hard in their profession, but neglecting their own business, their asset column.
so Kiyosaki's advice is pretty straightforward then.
It is. Keep your day job. It provides stability, earned income. That's important. But simultaneously, use that income to start buying real assets.
And crucially,
Avoid accumulating liabilities or personal stuff that just depreciates quickly. Think about that new car loses maybe 25% of its value the second you drive it off the lot.
classic liability.
Classic liability from a pure cash flow perspective. Doesn't put money in your pocket.
Okay, so what qualifies as these real assets that Rich Dad recommended?
He lists them pretty clearly. Businesses that don't require your physical presence managed by others or run on systems.
Okay, passive businesses.
Right. Various forms of paper assets, stocks, bonds, income-generating real estate rental properties.
The landlord route.
Notes basically IOUs, private loans you collect interest on, royalties from intellectual property music, books, patents.
Residual income.
Exactly. And basically anything else that has genuine value, consistently produces income, or significantly appreciates and has a ready market. The absolute key is they consistently put money in your pocket, often without your active daily labor.
This ties into that idea of the dollar as an employee, right?
Yes, a really powerful, transformative concept. Once a dollar goes into your asset column, Kiyosaki says you should never let it come out.
Don't spend your assets.
Treat it like your employee. That dollar becomes this diligent, tireless worker, works 204/7, and it can even work for generations, compounding, multiplying your wealth.
That's how true. Lasting wealth is built.
That's the engine. That's how you transition from working for money to having money work for you. It's a powerful visual. Each dollar you invest is a tiny employee working around the clock for you.
And this concept, it directly impacts how the rich approach luxuries.
Absolutely. Rich people buy luxuries last. They fund them with the income generated from their growing asset column.
Not with their salary or savings.
No, they don't buy on impulse, and they certainly don't go into debt for them. Kiyosaki shares that great example of his wife, Kim, wanting a Mercedes.
Right. They didn't just go finance it.
No way. They waited 4 years. During that time, they focused on acquiring and managing more apartment houses until those properties generated enough consistent cash flow to purchase the car outright.
So the asset bought the luxury.
Exactly. It became a true reward, he calls it, for their financial intelligence and patience. not a financial burden.
Which is the opposite of how many people do it.
Completely opposite. The poor and middle class often buy luxuries first, usually on credit, driven by that desire to look rich or keep up appearances.
The Joneses again.
Always the Joneses. But in reality, they just get deeper in debt, piling on liabilities that become a continuous financial burden, a major source of stress. It's that classic trap. Consumption outweighs intelligent, strategic investment, and that just perpetuates the rat race.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. How can you start minding your own business today? Even if it's just a small initial step.
Yeah, what's one concrete action?
What's one type of income-generating asset you could begin researching? Maybe a dividend-paying stock, a low-cost index fund, exploring a small rental property, even a side hustle that could generate passive income, something you could begin acquiring maybe even this month.
It's about taking those concrete, actionable steps, starting to build your own personal asset column, even if it's small to start.
Okay, moving to lesson 4. This one's about the power of corporations and the history of taxes. This gets into some interesting territory.
It does. Kiyosaki points out that the common Robin Hood fantasy, tax the rich, give to the poor, has ironically caused the most financial pain for the very poor and middle class it was supposedly designed to help.
How so?
Well, he notes his poor dad saw Robin Hood as a hero, right, fighting for the common man. But his rich dad starkly called Robin Hood a crook because he understood the real-world implications of those kinds of policies.
Interesting contrast.
He explains that originally, in places like England and America, taxes were largely temporary, levied to pay for wars, specific national projects.
Permanent.
Not permanent, but with the introduction of permanent income tax, initially levied only against the wealthy elite, the masses enthusiastically voted for it. They believed it would only affect the rich.
Sounds familiar.
Right. But Kiyosaki warns once the government got a taste of money, its appetite grew insatiable, and they quickly expanded the tax base.
Down to the middle class.
Exactly. And the critical point here is the rich don't just passively comply with new taxes, they react. They have the resources, money, power, strategic intent to change things.
They don't just pay more.
No. They hire the smartest attorneys, the best accountants. They leverage their influence to change laws. Or, more commonly, they find and utilize legal loopholes and tax shelters that benefit them.
While everyone else is stuck paying.
Precisely. That's how taxes eventually trickled down to the middle class, impacting the very people who initially voted for the tax the rich policies, while the wealthy found ways to legally minimize their burden.
So corporations became the tool for that.
They became the rich's enduring secret weapon, often just legal documents filed with the state, right? They were popularized centuries ago with sailing ships allowing investors to limit the financial risk of dangerous voyages.
Limiting liability.
Exactly. And today, they serve a similar crucial purpose, protecting accumulated wealth and significantly limiting personal liability. It's a legal shield for your assets.
What are the key advantages then, specifically?
Several significant ones, often underestimated. First, corporations often benefit from lower corporate income tax rates compared to individual rates.
Outflow tax.
Second, and this is huge, they allow individuals to pay many expenses with pre-tax dollars.
Pre-tax, that's the magic word.
It really is.
This guy.
As Kiyosaki puts it so directly, employees earn and get taxed, and they try to live on what is left. A corporation earns money, spends everything it legally can on business expenses, and is only taxed on anything that is left.
So things like
Car payments, insurance, health club memberships, business travel, meals, even strategic business trips like to Hawaii if it's legitimately for business can be company expenses. Paid with money before taxes are calculated, that's a massive financial advantage.
huge. And the third advantage.
Protection from lawsuits. In our increasingly litigious society, financially intelligent people use legal structures like corporations and trusts to shield their personal assets.
How does that work?
By setting up these entities, they can control everything they own, but legally own nothing in their individual name. Makes them far less vulnerable to personal lawsuits.
Control without ownership. Clever.
Very. And these tax advantages, these protections, they're often available to anyone, regardless of current net worth. But the rich are the ones who find them and use them. Why?
Because they're minding their own business.
Exactly. They're actively seeking financial knowledge, legal acumen, playing the game by the rules that benefit them.
So the cost of not knowing this stuff. Financial illiteracy.
It's immense, often invisible. An employee with a safe, secure job but without this financial aptitude, they effectively have no escape. They might work harder, earn more.
But taxes just take a bigger bite.
Exactly. A greater share of their increased efforts goes out the door, leaving them on the same treadmill, just running faster.
So the takeaway here,
Mhm.
even if forming a corporation isn't the first step for everyone,
Right, it might not be immediate.
understanding why the rich use these structures, it can fundamentally change how you view taxes and expenses.
Right. Absolutely. It makes you ask, what's one tax advantage I might be missing? One expense I'm paying with after-tax dollars simply because I haven't explored the rules of the game as they apply to me.
Food for thought. Okay, lesson 5. This one sounds really intriguing. The rich invent money.
Mm-hmm. This goes beyond just earning or saving.
Inventing money, what does that mean?
Kiyosaki emphasizes it's not just about the technical knowledge. Just as important is the guts, chutzpah, audacity, bravado, cunning, daring, tenacity, and brilliance, his words, to actually act on that knowledge.
So it's about courage, too.
Absolutely. He notes, often in the real world, it's not the smart who get ahead, but the bold. Financial genius, he says, requires both that technical knowledge and unwavering courage. If fear is too strong, that potential genius gets completely suppressed.
Like that Alexander Graham Bell story he tells?
Exactly. Bell tried to sell his telephone patent early on for just $100,000 to Western Union.
And they turned him down.
Scoffed at him, dismissed it as a toy. And that single decision cost them a multi-billion-dollar industry. Compare that bold vision with, say, a downsized middle manager, paralyzed by fear, just begging to keep their job, unable to see new opportunities.
The difference isn't intelligence.
It's the courage and audacity to act on opportunities, even when others don't see them.
And in today's world, wealth isn't just land or factories anymore.
No. Kiyosaki points out, wealth is increasingly in information. The person who has the most timely information owns the wealth.
So old ideas can be dangerous.
Old ideas, rigid beliefs, outdated knowledge, they become liabilities if they stop you from adapting to change. Continuous learning, willingness to discard old mental models, it's not just nice, it's an absolute imperative for financial success today.
Which is why he created the cash flow game, right?
Exactly. He famously invented the cash flow game to teach how money really works, and more importantly, how to escape the rat race. He realized lectures, reading books, often didn't translate into real-world understanding or behavioral change.
Games are different.
Games perfectly reflect behavior. They provide instant feedback systems. You learn from mistakes with play money. It's a safe, experiential learning environment. The consequences are theoretical, not catastrophic.
And the goal of the game is?
Profoundly practical. Teach players to think and create new and various financial options. Foster that financial creativity. Learn by doing.
He tells that story about the woman playing the game.
Yeah.
The boat.
Oh yeah, the doodad card. She got visibly angry, emotional, when she realized her boat, which she'd excitedly drawn, was actually costing her money every turn, keeping her trapped in the rat race in the game.
And she wanted her money back.
Demanded it, refused to acknowledge the game was just mirroring uncomfortable truths about her own financial reality. It really highlighted how deeply people resist confronting truths about their finances, how emotionally attached we get to liabilities.
Okay, let's unpack this inventing money idea more. And infinity ROI.
Right. Return on investment. He gives a vivid real-world example from the early 90s in Phoenix. Economy was terrible. Most financial planners were saying, just save your money, play it safe.
But Kiyosaki and his wife.
They were actively buying distressed properties. He describes one deal, buying a $60,000 house. But instead of a big down payment, he structured a $40,000 promissory note directly to the seller.
So he didn't need much cash up front.
Exactly. Only needed to come up with $20,000 for the mortgage and a small down payment. That property then generated $4,000 a year in consistent cash flow, often tax sheltered through their corporation.
Okay, good cash flow, but where's the inventing money part?
Here it is. Eventually, through consistent cash flow from deals like this, they got their initial $20,000 cash back.
They recouped their investment.
Right. And once your initial capital is returned from an investment, Kiyosaki calls this infinity ROI, because you're literally getting returns on an investment where you technically have no more personal money tied up.
Your capital is zero, but the asset keeps paying.
Exactly. The asset continues to generate income, but your personal capital is freed up. You can deploy it again and again, like a relentless financial machine.
That's powerful.
It is. And he says, pointedly, it is not gambling if you know what you're doing. It is gambling if you're just throwing money into a deal and praying. Financial intelligence fundamentally improves the odds, turns perceived risk into calculated opportunity.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How can you begin to invent money or, intentionally create your own luck rather than just waiting for opportunities?
It starts with knowledge.
What concrete steps could you take to increase your financial IQ? In accounting, investing strategies, understanding market cycles, the basics of law, all the stuff needed to spot opportunities others miss.
And structure deals that minimize your risk, maximize your return.
Consider seeking out resources like the cash flow game. Practice these concepts without real-world risk. Learn to think creatively about your options. Build that financial muscle.
Okay, next up, let's tackle the inner game of wealth. Overcoming obstacles.
The psychological barriers.
Exactly. Kiyosaki identifies 5 common roadblocks that keep even financially literate people from developing abundant assets and achieving financial independence. These aren't external market forces primarily, they're internal. Fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance.
This section is all about those actionable mindset shifts,
Yeah.
right? Building mental resilience.
Totally. Let's start with fear. Kiyosaki states, the primary difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they manage fear.
Everyone feels it, though.
Everyone feels it. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of making mistakes. Even the rich feel it. The key isn't eliminating fear you can't, but learning how to effectively handle it, transcend it.
He puts it powerfully. Failure inspires winners.
Failure defeats losers.
Right.
You learn from your losses, your setbacks. You don't let them define you or stop you. They become stepping stones, fuel.
He also stresses the importance of focus over balance,
Oof.
especially early on.
Yes, particularly when you have little money and a big aspiration to be rich. He contrasts the idea of a balanced portfolio, often safe, rarely leads to significant wealth creation, with the focused approach of legends like Edison, Gates, Trump.
Their strategy was intense.
Intense and singular. Put a lot of your eggs in a few baskets and focus. Follow one course until successful. It's about committing fully to a specific path, seeing it through, not spreading yourself too thin.
Like that Alamo story he tells.
When he and Mike were nervous about a big deal, Rich Dad would remind them, Texans don't bury their failures. They get inspired by them. They take their failures and turn them into rallying cries.
Powerful reframe.
Turns potential setbacks into fuel for future success.
Yeah.
Emphasizes resilience, that learning mindset. So for you listening, how can you reframe a past financial failure or setback? Turn it into inspiration, determination for your next move.
And where are you maybe being balanced when real success might require intense focus?
Good questions. Okay, next roadblock. Cynicism.
Chicken Little syndrome.
Yeah.
The sky's falling.
That's it. That constant stream of negative noise, either from inside your own head or from friends, family, the media. Kiyosaki contrasts cynics who criticize opportunities with winners who analyze them.
Criticism blinds you.
Analysis opens your eyes. Criticism shuts down your mind, dismisses possibilities. Rigorous analysis helps you see opportunities others miss because they're just caught in negativity.
He talks about the I don't want to fix toilets trap.
Yeah. People focus on minor inconveniences or perceived negatives of an investment, like, oh, the maintenance involved in real estate, instead of focusing on the much bigger goal, financial freedom, the vast potential returns.
They let small I don't wants block big opportunities.
Exactly. Prevent them from even exploring powerful investment vehicles that could be life-changing. So connecting this bigger picture for you. When you hear noise or potential downsides about an opportunity, do you immediately criticize and dismiss, or do you analyze? Separate fact from fear.
What I don't want is holding you back right now from exploring something potentially powerful just because you're focused on a small, manageable negative.
Rich Dad would say, just do what Colonel Sanders did. Fry that little chicken of doubt and go for it. Remember, he was turned down over 1,000 times. It's about overcoming that internal voice of doubt.
Okay, third roadblock, laziness.
And Kiyosaki astutely observes this is often disguised as just staying busy.
How so?
People avoid important financial matters, planning, learning, investing by being constantly occupied with work, kids' schedules, even too much TV or golf. Deep down, they know they're avoiding something crucial, but the busyness provides a convenient excuse.
So what's the cure?
Kiyosaki suggests, controversially maybe, embracing a little greed.
Greed. Isn't greed bad?
Not the destructive, insatiable kind. He means a healthy, motivating desire for something better. A hunger for financial freedom, a more comfortable life. Many of us are conditioned from childhood to feel guilty about desire, see it as selfish.
Yeah, that's true.
But Kiyosaki argues, guilt is worse than greed. for guilt robs the body of its soul and paralyzes action. Letting that little greed genuinely motivate you, asking yourself, what's in it for me when you're procrastinating? That can powerfully open up possibilities and spur you to action.
Like asking, how can I afford it? Instead of, I can't afford it.
Exactly. That sparks creativity, excitement, possibility. I can't afford it. Just shuts down the brain, reinforces scarcity.
Hmm.
So this raises a question for you. What would your life truly be like if you never had to work for money again? Or had all the financial resources you needed?
Let that little greed be the motivation.
Let it be the powerful internal motivation to finally take action on what you know you should be doing but have been avoiding.
Okay, fourth, bad habits.
Our lives, Kiyosaki argues, are far more a reflection of our habits than our education or even our intelligence.
Habits define us.
They do. And the single most important habit for building lasting wealth, he insists, is pay yourself first.
We touched on this. Allocate money to your asset column before paying expenses.
Before any expenses. Rent, mortgage, everything. Make it non-negotiable. He illustrates this vividly with cash flow diagrams. Those who prioritize paying themselves first intentionally funnel money into assets.
And if they come up short for bills?
They do not dip into savings or investments. Crucially, they use that very pressure, that slight discomfort of upcoming bills, to inspire their financial genius, to create more money, thereby increasing both their income and their financial intelligence.
This forces innovation.
Exactly. It's a powerful discipline. Kiyosaki admits he strategically pays his bills last, but he's financially astute enough to manage it. He uses the pressure from creditors to motivate him to create even more income.
That's a tough habit to adopt, though.
It is for many, but it's fundamentally about controlling your money, your financial destiny, rather than letting expenses or creditors control you. So for you, how can you immediately apply pay yourself first?
Even in a small way.
Set up an automatic transfer to an investment account, even a tiny amount. Make it go out before other bills are due. And what consumer debt can you strategically avoid so you don't have to consistently pay yourself last?
All right, final roadblock. Arrogance.
Rich Dad would constantly tell Kiyosaki, wisely, what I know makes me money. What I don't know loses me money. Every time I have been arrogant, I have lost money.
Why arrogance?
Because when I'm arrogant, Rich Dad said, I truly believe that what I don't know is not important, and that I already know everything I need to know.
So arrogance is a mask for ignorance.
Often, yes. A truly intelligent person, especially financially, welcomes new ideas, listens far more than they talk, asks clarifying questions instead of arguing or blustering. They fundamentally get that believing what I don't know is not important is incredibly dangerous, incredibly costly in the fast-moving world of money and investing.
So the self-reflection here is,
Are there areas of financial knowledge where your arrogance, maybe just overconfidence, might be subtly hiding ignorance? What's one specific financial topic or strategy you could actively seek to learn more about? Truly listening to experts, genuinely challenging your own long-held assumptions.
humility is key.
Financial humility, absolutely. Okay, with those psychological roadblocks addressed, let's get practical. Getting started. The 10 steps to awaken your financial genius.
The action plan.
The action plan. Kiyosaki insists finding great deals is surprisingly easy, like riding a bike after you wobble and fall a bit. The real challenge isn't intellectual, he says, it's determination. Perseverance. He tells that story about the old gold miner.
There is gold everywhere.
Most people are not trained to see it.
Right. It's about developing your financial genius to see opportunities that others just overlook or dismiss.
Okay, step 1.
Find a reason greater than reality. The power of spirit. Your emotional drive, your deep why, it has to be overwhelmingly strong. Strong enough to push through obstacles, setbacks, self-doubt.
If the why isn't strong enough, the road ahead feels too long, too hard. You'll likely give up when things get tough. So for you, take a moment. Reflect. What are your deep-seated emotional reasons for wanting financial freedom? Articulate your why, vividly. That conviction, that internal fire, that's the fuel for the whole journey.
Got it. Powerful why. Step 2.
Make daily choices. The power of choice. Every single dollar that passes through your hands, Kiyosaki says, you hold the power to choose your future. Rich, poor, middle class, your spending, your saving habits, they're a direct reflection of who you are, what you value, what you prioritize.
Are you consciously choosing wealth?
With every dollar you spend or invest, directing it towards assets or just passively letting it flow out towards liabilities. It's not about being perfect, but being intentional. Every single financial decision.
Okay. Step 3. This one's about people.
Choose friends carefully. The power of association. Kiyosaki strongly warns, don't listen to poor or frightened people. The chicken littles, always telling you why something won't work, why it's too risky, why you'll fail.
Your environment matters.
Hugely. If your closest circle constantly reinforces scarcity, fear, negativity, how likely are you to step out of your comfort zone financially? To really grow? Wise investors, he notes, actively buy when an investment is unpopular, knowing profit is made when you buy, not sell.
That takes conviction.
Immense conviction, which is easily eroded if you're surrounded by negativity. So, for you, who are the 6 adults you spend the most time with? Do they uplift your financial thinking, challenge you to grow, or do they reinforce outdated ideas and fears?
Seek out mentors.
Actively seek out mentors, associations that align with your financial goals. It's a critical investment in your mindset, your future.
Step 4, learning.
Master a formula, then learn a new one. The power of learning quickly. Just like a baker needs a recipe, you need formulas for making money, building wealth. Kiyosaki says you become what you study. Your continuous learning shapes your financial identity.
Don't get stuck on old formulas.
Right. Don't cling rigidly to old ways, like work solely for money, if they aren't serving your highest aspirations. Actively seek out new investment formulas. Take classes, attend seminars, read voraciously. In today's fast world, it's not just what you know, but how fast you learn and adapt that truly counts.
So what new formula could you learn this week?
Maybe a practical class on real estate, a deep dive into stock analysis, engaging with something like the cash flow game online. Commit to learning something new.
Step 5, back to a core habit.
Pay yourself first. The power of self-discipline. We keep coming back to this because it's fundamental. It's not just a catchy phrase. It's a disciplined, non-negotiable practice. Managing cash flow, relationships with money and people, personal time.
Strengthens you financially.
Over time, absolutely. Prioritizing your asset column builds your future. Paying yourself last makes you weaker, vulnerable to pressures. Remember those cash flow diagrams. Which one do you want to embody? It's often easier to change your own habits than try to change everyone else around you.
Okay. Step 6, professionals.
Pay your brokers well. The power of good advice. In the information age, valuable, actionable information is priceless. Good professionals, experienced attorneys, astute accountants, savvy investment brokers should ultimately make you more money than they cost you.
If they deliver value.
Reward them fairly, generously. Kiyosaki stresses finding brokers who own assets themselves, who genuinely have your best interests at heart, whose success is tied to yours.
Are you valuing your time by hiring pros?
Or trying to save a few bucks doing everything yourself, potentially missing much bigger opportunities? Seek out and cultivate relationships with advisors who are also active investors, aligned with your long-term goals.
Step 7. This was the controversial Indian giver concept.
Right, but the core point is crucial for sophisticated investors.
Yeah.
The power of getting something for nothing, meaning structuring deals to get your initial capital back quickly, so you essentially own the asset for free thereafter, allowing your capital to be redeployed.
How fast do I get my money back?
That's the question sophisticated investors ask. They look for strong ROI and that piece of the action that costs them nothing in the long run.
Like with real estate or stocks.
Exactly. Pulling the initial investment out once value is added, letting the remaining free shares or equity continue to grow. This is where financial intelligence really shines. When you consider an investment beyond the initial return, what free asset or additional benefit can you structure in once your capital is returned?
Buying the pie and cutting it into pieces.
Metaphorically, yes. Leveraging your capital more effectively, generating recurring, risk-free returns.
Step 8. Luxuries again.
Use assets to buy luxuries. The power of focus. Fundamental principle, buy luxuries last. Funded exclusively with income from your growing asset column. Not debt, not primary capital.
Like that story of the friend's son in the car.
Perfect example. Given $3,000 not to buy the car, but to trade stocks with the goal of making $6,000 for the car. But the real goal was learning the market mechanics. The car became secondary. A true reward for financial intelligence learned.
So what luxury do you desire?
Instead of buying it on credit or using savings, what income-generating asset could you acquire first? That would reliably generate the cash flow to pay for it. Use that desire to consume as a positive motivation to invest. Build your asset column. Transform a liability into an incentive for wealth creation.
Step 9. Heroes.
Need for heroes. The power of myth. Actively find successful people. to inspire you, to learn from. Seek out those who've built wealth, achieved financial freedom, not just those following conventional wisdom or telling you what you want to hear.
Don't just admire them.
Deconstruct their strategies, understand their principles,
Yeah.
apply their proven approaches to your own life. Who are your financial heroes? What specific actions could you take this week to learn from their journey, emulate their philosophy?
And finally, step 10, teaching.
Teach, and you shall receive the power of giving. Both Kiyosaki's dads were teachers, but Rich Dad emphasized reciprocity. Give what you want to receive: money, smiles, friendship. He believed in giving money, ironically, especially when he felt short on it, believing in that universal law.
The more I teach, the more I learn.
Exactly, a powerful feedback loop. So, for you, how can you share your financial knowledge? Even just one simple concept from this deep dive. Share it with someone else. The very act of teaching deepens your own understanding, reinforces the lessons, often brings surprising new insights.
Okay, those are the 10 steps, but he had some crucial to-dos too, right? For taking action.
Yes, very practical stuff. He says, quite directly, stop doing what you're doing if it's clearly not working financially. Look for new ideas, books, seminars, immerse yourself in new financial perspectives.
And make lots of offers.
Huge emphasis on that, especially in real estate. Make tons of offers, always include escape clauses, contingencies to limit your risk. He thinks finding deals is absurdly easy and simple if you don't overcomplicate it with fear or overthinking.
Get out there and date the market.
Talk to people, make lowball offers, negotiate confidently, physically jog or drive through specific areas monthly. Look for bargains and change. Change, economic, demographic, structural. That's what turns a bargain into profit.
Shop for bargains everywhere.
In all markets. Profits are made in the buying, not the selling. Timeless principle. Applies to toilet paper on sale or the stock market during a crash.
Look in the right places, foreclosures.
Right places like foreclosure auctions. And strategically, look for buyers first, then sellers. That mindset lets you buy the pie and cut it in pieces. Leads to bigger deals, diversified profits. Understand the demand before you commit to supply.
Learn from history, and above all,
Action always beats inaction. Learn all the theory you want, but without taking the leap, it's just knowledge, not wealth. You have to act.
okay, let's bring this all together. The 3 incomes and the cash outflow quadrant. This feels like a strategic overview.
It really is. Kiyosaki simplifies income into 3 primary types. First, ordinary earned income.
Your paycheck.
Your salary, wages, bonuses, money you work for directly, typically the highest taxed income. The government sees it as compensation for labor. This primarily defines the employee and self-employed S quadrants.
Okay, second type.
Passive income. Income generated from real estate investments, rental income, or royalties from intellectual property. This income is often the least taxed. It's a hallmark of the investor and big business owner B quadrants. Requires less active labor once the asset is set up.
And third.
Portfolio income. Income from paper assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, other financial instruments. This is your money working for you in the financial markets, not your direct labor. Generally taxed more favorably than earned income, like passive income.
So the key to wealth, according to Kiyosaki, is
The strategic ability to convert your ordinary earned income into passive and/or portfolio income as quickly and efficiently as possible. He constantly reminds us, the government taxes the income you work hard for more than the income your money works hard for.
crucial insight for minimizing taxes and accelerating wealth.
Absolutely. And this understanding leads directly to his iconic cash flow quadrant. It categorizes people based on where their money primarily comes from, shows the different paths to wealth.
Okay, break down the quadrants.
E for employee. Relies on a traditional job, salary, benefits, perceived security, income tied directly to their time and effort.
Yes.
S for self-employed or small business owner. Works for themselves, owns their job. Freelancers, consultants, small shop owners. More autonomy, but still largely trading time for money. If they stop working, the income stops. B for big business owner. Owns a system that works for them rather than working in the system. They delegate, build teams, leverage scalable operations. Income can be generated even without their constant presence.
And I.
I for investor. Money works for them. Primary income comes from their assets, stocks, bonds, real estate, generating income independently of their direct labor.
And most people are conditioned for ERS.
Through traditional schooling, societal norms, yes, focus on getting a good job or starting a small service-based business. But Kiyosaki emphatically stresses, true financial freedom, accelerated wealth, it's more quickly and sustainably achieved by strategically moving towards B or I.
Like his own journey. Xerox E to BNI.
Exactly. He uses that great pipeline analogy, too. Remember Ed carrying buckets of water back and forth, working harder for more money per bucket?
Versus Bill, who built the pipeline.
Right. Bill initially made less per bucket, but eventually water flowed continuously into his bank account, whether he worked or not. It highlights the immense power of building systems, building assets that generate ongoing passive income, freeing you from that constant trade of time for money.
And the cash flow games teach these skills.
That's their design. Simulate converting earned income into passive portfolio income. Teach basic investment skills, accounting principles, financial literacy in a fun, interactive way.
A safe space to learn and make mistakes.
Exactly. To think and create new and various financial options where mistakes are just learning opportunities, not real-world disasters. It's a risk-free training ground for financial genius.
Because risk comes from not knowing.
What you're doing. Warren Buffett's wisdom. Kiyosaki's philosophy, the games, they consistently emphasize continuous learning, gaining practical experience, building financial intelligence to significantly reduce perceived risk, making investing less about gambling, more about informed strategic decisions. Build your internal understanding before you put capital at stake.
So, thinking about your personal path to financial freedom,
Mm-hmm.
are you mainly focused on generating more earned income in the E or S quadrants? Or are you strategically working to convert that earned income into powerful passive and portfolio income, the kind that defines the BNI quadrants? What quadrant are you mostly operating in now? And which quadrant do you aspire to move towards?
That choice, where your cash comes from, how it flows, it's absolutely fundamental to your financial destiny.
Wow. Okay. This deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad has really shown us that true financial liberation, it isn't just about how much money you make.
No,
It's fundamentally about how you think about money, how
that's
you
right.
manage your emotions around it, and how you choose to apply financial intelligence in everything you do.
Turning insights into action. Consistent, sustained action. Every single day, with every dollar.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, Kiyosaki says, money is only an idea, and it's what is in your head that determines what is in your hands. So for you listening now, the ultimate, most critical implementation challenge is this.
How will you leverage the power of your mind and the choices you make every single day with every dollar that passes through your hands to manifest the wealth and freedom you desire?
Will you spend it foolishly on liabilities, or will you invest it wisely in your mind and in income-generating assets, compelling your money to work hard for you?
Remember Kiyosaki's closing thought, your world is only a mirror of you.
What reflection do you truly want to see? When you look at your financial life, how can you start today, maybe with just one small intentional choice, to mirror that abundant financial future you envision by making your money work hard for you, maybe even for generations to come?